Alright, so here's a good example of how it's nice to have another set of eyes on a project, because I had always needed to split this big tall column so that we could fit it in the house, because I made it to where it like barely will fit in there. So when you go to tip it up, it wouldn't have cleared the ceiling. So I had created a seam in the column right about here.
There's a seam right there.
And that would have meant that in the front, though, I would have had to have gone like around the rocks, which would have worked. But Gina came out and she was like, hey, why don't you just have the seam where the top is on there? And I was like, oh, that's a really good idea. So I just took a Sawzall, cut the top off, and my seam now will be a nice straight line. So the only thing I have to do now is,
my goodness.
The only thing I have to do now is I have to cut this, just add a piece of wood right in here. Right, Harrison?
All right.
So now all we have to do is just add a little piece of framing in here. And to do that, I grabbed a piece of scrap wood. Now, I don't know if Gina, let me see if I can put this back where it was. Gina and I are such good hoarders of old material and stuff. Can you guess what this piece of wood
is? It the window cut out to the funeral parlor in the western town?
That's exactly what it is.
You gonna talk with a cup in your hand?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Abracadabra. I was like, okay, think heavy, think thick.
It's crazy.
Because we haven't gotten that kind of, what's that, masonite?
No, it's marlite.
Marlite?
Yeah, where it's got the MDF outsides and the plywood inside. Masonite or marlite or MDO.
MDO. There you go.
We had a hummingbird fly in our house. We're sitting there eating lunch, taking a lunch break, and all of a sudden a hummingbird off.
Yeah.
Like, what the?
Someone left the back door open. Yeah, it was like 30 minutes later. Poor little guy.
But yeah, anyway, I'll just add this in there, and then I will have a nice way to bolt the top down. And then it's time to add foam in the back. That'll be fun.
More foam. Hey, though, you got the front finished.
Yeah, except for the light sand, it should be good to go.
Helping, Dad? You looking where you're carving?
We're making rocks. We're making a mess is what we're doing.
I was actually like making a haunted house inside.
Always making a haunted house.
Yeah, the haunted house I Spy Spooky Night.
Okay.
Oh.
Good job.
Thank you for helping, buddy.
From there.
All right, so I'm back behind the castle, and if you can remember when I first started, I started out by building some wood flats. I could have just carved the whole thing out of foam, but it was kind of nice to give me like a starting point. And I wasn't sure if I was going to keep it or take it out once I fiberglass the front side. But now, as I've gotten farther and farther along, I think I'm going to go ahead and keep it. We'll also have some wood to attach the bunk bed or the loft bed inside. And what I decided to do is Gina was like, why don't you just glue some pieces of foam in there and then carve some rock? And I was like, well, that's going to be a lot of work, but it ended up not being that big a deal. It'll also give it a little bit of structure. To do that, we just cut some pieces and used expanding foam to glue it in place. And then if I had any gaps, I just filled it in with the expanding foam. The next thing was I just quickly drew out all my rocks and then started carving them to give them a little bit of definition. And then once I got that done, I used my disc sander to go in and just grind out all the grooves. I could have just went in and glued a little bit more foam over the tops of that and not had to do that, but again, we were trying to keep this foam as thin as possible so that there's very minimal foam in there. Then the next step was to take some of this drywall mud and go through and just kind of make sure that I had as nice of rock shapes as possible. Once the joint compound dries, I just give it a little bit of a sand just to kind of make sure that I have as good of a rock shape as possible. I went in some of my cracks to just kind of make sure that I filled it in, they weren't too deep. I still have to go in and create a ledge for the loft bed top to rest on. Now the next thing is to apply the barrier so that when I do the resin for the fiberglass, it doesn't melt the foam. Now to do this, I had a couple options. First, I tried to apply some foil, and to do that I'm just using some wallpaper adhesive that I got. I got the idea from another YouTube channel called Sculpture Studios, where they carve and sculpt some awesome projects. I think what I'm going to do is I have quite a bit of this epoxamite left over, and it is a laminating resin, so it's basically for this. It's going to cost me a little bit more because I may have to buy some. But that way what I can do is just go through and apply a thin coat of that, and then that should be good enough. Then I can go back in with my fiberglass resin. I don't have to worry about it melting. I may end up going back to the foil if I go through too much epoxy, but we'll see. It's just kind of time consuming because you got to tear all the pieces and get in all the little cracks and stuff, and I may end up doing it if it ends up costing me too much in epoxy. Alright guys, so I decided to go ahead and keep going with the tin foil, and it is getting faster and faster now that I'm getting used to it. This wallpaper adhesive is actually working pretty good. I'm watering it down a little bit to make it last. I've even started to apply fiberglass. This was a couple days ago. It's pretty hard. I'm going to go over it with, I think, another layer and then do a gel coat over it, give it a light sand, and I can start painting this thing. But this is pretty awesome, you guys. I also got one layer of fiberglass all on this piece. Sorry I didn't film any of that. I didn't even plan on getting this far in this video, so what I'll do is in the next video I'll show exactly the mixture of putting the foil and then the resin and doing a little bit of fiberglass.
I just kept thinking I've got plenty of fiberglassing to do that I wasn't worried about not showing you guys in the next video. I've got this tower up on the table because we're still trying to figure out putting some kind of chute for the action figures to fall down. I think that's going to work nicely if the arms are in the up position. They fit in this pipe. And then I've still got to do the door. You can see the amount of work that I have to do. I still may switch to the epoxy. But so far the tinfoil seems to be going okay. I just wish there was like 3 more of me working on this project. But now that all the birthdays and breaks and swap meets and everything else is over, maybe I can work on this thing really hard the next week or so. Why did I have to make this thing so big? Jeez, I gotta start doing little projects. You ready to look like a giant Hershey Kiss? No. Can you guys imagine a giant chocolate Castle Grayskull? Mmm. Alright guys, we'll see you guys next time.